It's my official welcoming, even if there's only two of us or three of us, because I really like to acknowledge in our sanghas that we welcome all people of every age and ethnicity and cultural heritage and religious backgrounds and socioeconomic groups and abilities, sexual orientation and gender identity, and that in welcoming everyone to the Dhamma, we study together and practice for the benefit of all beings and for this earth that we stand upon, recognizing that suffering that's caused by biases and prejudices and systems of power and national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, all of those, age, class, ethnicity, um, that we aspire to cause no harm and to dismantle as best we can barriers that cause separation and suffering, recognizing that our liberation is interconnected with the liberation of all. And so in that also, I like to acknowledge the lands of the indigenous peoples that we sit on. I change my title when I start a Zoom to have my either the Grand Rondes or the Multnomah, because the tribes here around Portland, there were a lot of them, but there's the 7 tribes that make up the Grand Ronde, and then there's 27 bands and a whole lot of confederated tribes of the Siletz peoples. And so just acknowledging the indigenous communities that were here before us is important to me, that we acknowledge that they were forced to leave their land to the benefit of colonists and settlers, and we have great benefit from that. And acknowledging those that came before us, the original makers and artists and healers, and that we humbly stand with them in support of their livelihood and their crafts and their sacred histories and stories. And I also like to acknowledge the Asian immigrants in the 19th century that came to the US, that thanks to the California gold rush, a lot came west, and Asian Buddhist countries who settled here in the US are many: Sri Lankan, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Thai, Cambodian, Vietnamese, and there were increasing numbers of immigrants arriving from China, Vietnam, and various Theravadan practicing countries from Southeast Asia with the Immigration Act in 1965. So just acknowledging that, we are ancestors ourselves, and we want to, at least I want to be, um, conduct my life in such a way that there will be enough veneration from descendants that, may we be fortunate enough to have future generations recite our names, reckoning with these perplexities and perversities of America's racial karma. We're guided by all of these ancestors, named and unnamed. So may we take this time when we sit together to be acknowledging our ancestors, those whose lands we're on, those who uh, brought Buddhism closer to us, those who went before us in all the sanghas of 2,600 years ago, nuns and lay people and monks who chanted what they knew of the Buddha's teachings and got it this far. So in honoring of the Buddha and the Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha, and also the Sangha, all those groups of people, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. So I'm just going to sing the little Pali part of taking refuge. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranam gacchami, Dhanang saranam gacchami, Sanghang saranam gacchami. For the second time. Dutiyampi Buddhang saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhanang saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang saranam gacchami. And for the third time, Tatyampi Buddhang Saranam Gacchami. Tatyampi Dhanang Saranam Gacchami. Tatyampi Sanghang Saranam Gacchami. It's interesting how the Buddha seemed to do things in threes. Oftentimes he was asked something 3 times before he actually answered it. And I think part of this is repetitious for, remembering the historical texts and remembering what the Buddha said, but 3 times to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Oh, I don't have my original sound on. Now I do. And may we also acknowledge the container of our sitting practice together to include undertaking the training of refraining from taking a life of any living being, that we aspire to become kind and of service to all beings, and undertaking the training to refrain from taking that which isn't freely given, aspiring to become generous to all beings, and undertaking the rule of training to refrain from sexual misconduct, acts that might cause harm, that we aspire to nurture love and relationship and beauty, and undertaking the training to refrain from false and harmful speech, aspiring to use speech to create happiness and harmony and understanding, and undertaking the rule of training to refrain from the use of intoxicants. We aspire to cultivate mindfulness and wisdom. And with these understandings of harmonious living, there's a safety and a trust in the container that we create. And as we allow this gratitude and appreciation for those who have become enlightened and gone before us and were able to see for themselves clearly how suffering can be observed and let go of, we undertake this training, however difficult it is from time to time, to sit still, to find a place that feels comfortable yet upright, or at least able to find enough interest to see clearly what's going on in the heart and the mind as we sit. We can feel the pressure of our buttocks on the cushion, or wherever we might feel pressure of our bodies against each other, like our arms against our body, our seat or our back touching something, where our feet are touching. This sensation of touch, it can be grounding, and we can return to this touch point. There's also the touch point of the breath at the nostrils, where it might feel warm or cool, or rough or smooth. We're just there, aware and available, one moment at a time. We may feel the breath at the diaphragm. We can feel sometimes a kind of pressure on the inhale or the release of pressure on the exhale. Just beginning to allow the body and mind to come together. We like to train the mind. It's a kind of labor intensive activity to be aware of what's happening in the mind and have awareness and effort, be interested enough to be present, having mindfulness be right there at the front. So, whatever is happening, mindfulness can be there and can fairly quickly notice that whatever it is soon turns out to be impermanent. We can't grasp onto it anymore. Sometimes we grasp onto things that are pleasant and try to hang on to them as long as we can. But even mindfulness can be there to see at some point, oh, grasping is happening. And then we can go back to that touch point or the breath that we feel the most in our bodies. We may notice after a while tensions in the body. Sometimes just bringing our mindfulness to a gentle sweeping through the body, mindful of the activity around the eyes. Maybe taking a breath and feeling tension that might be in the face, and noticing that when mindfulness is present, quite often that tension can dissolve, or mindfulness notices when the tension leaves. We may notice sensations in our shoulders and in our back. Making a soft, gentle note of tightness or relaxation, or maybe there's disappointment, or maybe there's grasping. But we just keep letting that present moment sweeping of the attention through the body with mindfulness, noticing the pressure of our bodies on the cushion or the seat or the couch or the bed or wherever we are. Present in this very moment. We can return to the breath when we find our minds wandering. We might at some point wake up in the middle of our wandering mind and go, oh, thinking is happening. Or it can be gently noted that it's thinking about the past or thinking about the future. Or maybe we don't even know, we're just sort of in a confused state. But mindfulness is there and present, noticing these mind states. And when we notice thinking is happening, thinking is not our enemy. Thinking is just one of our sense doors. We have hearing, arriving pure sound at the ears. We have tasting and smelling and touching. And we have the thought door. And so it's just one more thing that happens over and over again. We don't need to stop our thoughts. But sometimes we may notice that there's something underneath the thoughts that's sort of a deeper flow, a kind of river of mindfulness. And we can touch our toe into that water or put our stick in that water and make a whirlpool. Let that stick be the stick of mindfulness. And in that sea of awareness, that motion of awareness. And we have emotions that arise. We have aches and pains in the body that arise. But what the teachings of Vipassana, of seeing clearly, show us the most is the impermanent nature of what's arising. We can try to hang on to something that's pleasant for a while, and then we notice aversion and disappointment is arising because we couldn't hang on to it, and we can see clearly the suffering that happens in the mind and in the heart. And we can also notice the more often we see these constantly changing arisings and passing away, the more we realize that they aren't personal. We can't hang on to them. They arise and pass away due to their own conditions. And when we see clearly the three characteristics of disappointment and the constantly changing nature of things and the non-self nature of things, those are moments of awakening. Those are moments of making new tracks in our mind of joyousness, joyousness at seeing suffering clearly. but we keep it simple, just returning to the breath. Can we count our breath in and out as one and make it to 10? Well, wherever, however far you make it, you start over again when you notice that the mind is wandering. It's a training, a taming of the mind. And the heart is there to hold ourselves gently and with compassion as we begin once again this process of freeing our hearts and minds by seeing clearly the changing nature of all phenomena. Sometimes if we find the mind wandering, or we sort of wake up to the present moment in confusion or not quite sure what we're doing, we can just take a look at the mind and ask ourselves, what is the attitude of the mind? And we don't even have to have judgments about what the attitude of the mind is. It switches so quickly. It can be sad and grumpy and happy and a myriad of emotional ups and downs, mind states that we can see clearly. We can see how quickly they move, or maybe sometimes not so quickly. But it's mindfulness that is here at the fore of everything, and awareness is with it. So, whatever mindfulness is noting, awareness is there to be present with it. And we can notice sometimes there might be unskillful or repetitive thoughts that aren't particularly useful, and we can just let them go. We don't have to analyze them or think about them. They go on their own. We can be aware of them going, and we can also notice the strengths that awareness can show, where we might have compassion for ourselves, kindness for ourselves. We may notice energy is with us, or maybe we need to use just a little more effort to be interested in what's happening. But we can always return to the breath, training the puppy, returning to the newspaper, training the mind, attention returning to the breath or the touch point. We remember that we have the precepts of non-harming, so that if we notice we might be beating ourselves up about something, we can just turn away from it and have genuine kindness, genuine well-wishing. We're just resting in natural, pure awareness, this clear light of reality. That these three jewels of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and the whole of universal truths are within our own mind, and nothing more is needed. And so when I use words like effort or guiding the mind or deepening our practice or progressing on the spiritual path, these are simply guidelines, lampposts to help light the way. And since words are what we use to communicate something that's ungraspable, I just try to keep coming up with a few words every now and then for the reminder of being attentive and interested, just sitting in this natural state of being. Mental states arise and pass. Sounds come to the ears. Thoughts are like a flurry, and then they settle down. We're just being carried along in this gentle stream without attachment or aversion. Every now and then we just begin again. We can open our eyes, let light in. We can even stand up to keep ourselves present. If we investigate, we may notice sometimes these negative mind states that arise. If we can, we try to be so aware that we can prevent them. But after that, which is not very many of us have that kind of mind control, but once we see negative states of mind arising, that's a second part of skillful effort. And after seeing them, they can release easily. And we also have the effort of cultivating positive states of mind and then maintaining positive states of mind. Positive states of mind in the Dharma refers to things like kindness, compassion, even some of the words might pop in from the Eightfold Path of mindfulness and concentration. Though that's inclining the mind toward the more skillful. And we just notice when it's not so skillful. Refreshing and beginning again, holding ourselves in kindness and in compassion, awakening some of those places in our hearts of the Brahma-vihara practices of kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Letting kindness be felt, whatever elicits a sense of kindness. Maybe it's your interaction with our animals that we were talking about earlier. Maybe you've been working on training the heart and mind to fall into unconditioned appreciation for our own well-being. Sometimes that's hard. Always worth the effort. May we imagine a way in our hearts that we can hold ourselves gently. Seeing ourselves happy and healthy. Having maybe a supportive friend in there in that circle with us. We can let this kindness develop toward our friend. And we can include a benefactor, a teacher of ours, letting this person be in our circle, this circle of goodwill, unconditional goodwill. We have seen and know and understand some of our direct causes of suffering, and we wish for ourselves and others to be free from suffering, to see clearly what happens when we attach ourselves to something and wish it to be different than it is, or grasp onto something hoping that it will last. seeing clearly the impermanent nature of things helps us have this kindness and compassion in our hearts that we all share in this human existence. May we let this sense of goodwill and kindness include not only ourselves and our close friend and a teacher or a benefactor. Let it also include a neutral person or a group of neutral people, envisioning health and well-being for this person in our hearts, to include them. Imagining the neutral person that you might have seen recently online or outdoors, including them in this act of goodwill from our hearts. May you have ease in your life. May you hold yourself gently and in compassion when things are difficult. May you notice those moments of joy and nurture them as they arise. Those moments of mindfulness, waking up in this present moment, can bring a smile to our face. And may others around us, our benefactor, our teacher, our close friend, the neutral person, just as I wish to be happy, I know that all beings wish to be happy. May this happiness in our hearts that we are cultivating toward others, toward understanding others' suffering, toward seeing clearly the impermanent nature of change, and holding in our hearts that others also find freedom. Those that are seen and those that are unseen. May we include animals, even the creepy crawling ones that we might not like so much. All beings, those that fly, those that walk, those that swim, those that are unfamiliar with us, beings in suffering and beings in joy. May all beings know happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering, have ease and well-being. Anicca vata sankara upadavaya domino upakitawa merochanti te samvapasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence. They arise and pass away. Conditions come together and fall apart. And when we see this clearly, we see it with mindfulness. That's the greatest happiness, which is peace. May we hold this in our hearts. May we really appreciate and know that the goodness of this practice is of great benefit to us and to all beings, no matter how it feels at the time. We're putting our hearts and our energy into training our hearts and minds and being present to all conditions that arise. And may understanding this clearly bring peace. Thank you for your practice. Truly, truly, thank you for your practice. Brings a smile to my heart and to my face. And we can take a couple minutes for a bio break, maybe get some water. I'll ring the bell in less than 5 minutes. Just stand up, do a little stretch if you want to. I have to plug in my battery, and I'll be back.